Well, good evening, everybody. Good to see you all. We're blessed tonight to have Troy McKeown and Cindy Barlow with us. We're going to be talking about taxes. Now, I know you all aren't familiar with taxes, but that was a joke. I just fell off the stage and died. Okay. All right. Let's stand. You know, when all else fails, let's pray. Yes? Shall we do that? So please stand for the prayer and the pledge. Heavenly Father, we thank you tonight. We just give you glory and praise. We thank you for a beautiful day today, beautiful weekend we've had. And Lord, we want to thank you. And thank you, Lord, that we have good minds, that you've given us good minds, that you've given us rights. They come from God. And we thank you for those rights tonight. We claim those rights, and we stand for those rights. And that's why we're together tonight, because we want to make right what's wrong. And Lord, all we can do is look to you and know that you're going to give us the strength to do it. And Lord, we believe you for that tonight. We thank you. We thank you for these dear people that have come to speak to us about things that need correction. And Lord, help us to stand with them and behind them. Lord, to stand against the tyranny that's going on right now in our state. And Lord, we thank you, Father God, with your help, we can do all things. And we thank you. In Jesus' mighty name we pray. Amen and amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, you may be seated. Thank you, Troy. Troy's here to talk about, he's been through a week or so of 2 weeks of tax stuff.
Tax stuff.
So he's got an earful to tell us. So Troy McKeown is our senator. We're glad to have him. He's the giant slayer. And thank the Lord for him. Troy, go for it.
How's everybody doing tonight?
We're good.
So, as you know, I'm the circus monkey. And now I have some friends. Ben, you've been promoted. You are one of the circus monkey's goons. Good job, I think.
Who called him that?
Huh?
Who called him that?
Jim West.
Oh, yeah.
Wow. New t-shirt.
That's a compliment.
Senator McKeown and his goons came to city council.
Boy, that.
I have to be nice, though. He shops in my store. And
Shop or shoplift?
he did tell my employees that Don's Supermarket works very well because of the employees, in spite of me. Anyway,
He's pretty bold, isn't he? Wow.
I digress. If you've been by Don's Supermarket, let me tell you what happens when you find City Hall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They come dig a big hole in your entrance, and then they just go away. They don't fix anything.
It's the biggest pothole in town.
Well, I guess they can't yell at me for potholes now, right? Okay, I'm going to try to be fairly quick tonight so you can hear what Cindy has to say. She probably understands the assessment stuff way better than I ever will. But let's start out with what's going on. So, we're at a revenue meeting. I can't believe what I'm hearing. We want to tax wind, and we want to tax solar. So we want to tax something we're subsidizing. We want to tax a tax. Isn't that great? I'm going to get in your pocket, and I'm going to send it to the federal government, and they're going to bring it back and put those beautiful windmills up that we all love, that generate 2 megawatts apiece, on a windy day maybe 3, and you're going to pay for that. And then we're going to get rid of your coal-fired power plants, and we're going to make you use the wind power, and guess what we're going to do? We're going to get back in your pockets. You're going to pay for that too.
Wow.
We had a saying in the Army for stuff like this. It's a self-licking ice cream cone. It's ridiculous. We're gonna subsidize something that doesn't work and make you pay more and make you use it. That's where we're headed. So it's important we all stay engaged. Just to give you a kind of a real thought, a windmill produces 2 to 3 megawatts of power. A coal-fired power plant produces 500,000 megawatts of power. Now, doing the quick math, I'm sorry, I'm a product of the Wyoming public school system. I need 250,000 windmills. And this is a device that over its life won't pay for itself. I really need to get out of private business and get into governmental things. It's lucrative. So we're going to tax that. That's going to lead me to my next point.
Is that bad?
Property taxes. Property taxes. The entire state of Wyoming. All the little people, me, you, and everybody who actually has to work, wanted property tax relief. They all asked, could you give us some property tax relief? And we ran a couple bills, and we're going to run some more. We're not giving up, which we'll get to the question and answer quiz session in a minute. But we passed a resolution so you can vote during the next election on another class of property tax. And we call that relief. Actually, what it does do is it strips you as a homeowner out all on your own so they can come after you without going after the small businesses. Once again, just Troy McKeown's opinion. Not a tax lawyer. Probably not even a smart guy, but that's what we're doing. So here's the question. How many of you would like to see property taxes go away? Oh, look at that. And if they went away, how many of you wouldn't mind paying more sales tax? I think that's the only way I can get this done.
How much more sales tax?
Probably 2 or 3%.
But Troy, what's our property tax? That's not bad. If you got a sales tax instead of a property tax, only the people that consume pay the tax.
That's right. It's fair.
Yep. And besides that, you collect more money from the tourists going to Yellowstone Park or wherever.
Well, that's what we want to do, bleed the tourists, right?
Hey, if they can afford to travel, they can afford to pay it.
The tax you don't pay. I got elected, and now I got to travel. It's been a busy summer. I go all over the state. I have to stay in a hotel. You know, that tax nobody pays. It's ridiculous. I thought I was doing well. I found a room for $89 a night. So I thought. When it was done, it was $110. That's $21 worth of assorted taxes that we in Wyoming don't pay. And as I'm looking at the parking lot, almost every car in the parking lot had a Wyoming plate on it. So you're paying it. Once again, non-paid ad, just my opinion. So I'm going to bring up what Ben did. Ben made this wonderful little video and put it on Facebook. I stole it, Ben, I'm sorry. I did give you credit, though. That's why you became a goon. So we have Heidi Gross. Mr. Mayor, I just spent the week in Sheridan learning how to write grants and get federal money.
Oh, no.
Has anybody thought about what we do with federal money? Did your driveway get paved? Did your property taxes go down? Did the ferry visit you with some extra money?
I wish.
What do we do with federal funds that we get? We grow more state, local, county governments. I'm gonna hide now because there's a big man in the back that might be mad when I say this. One of our county commissioners, who I respect dearly. Our county owns 147 properties. Does that sound about right?
About.
Give or take a dozen on any given day.
148 if I don't pay my taxes.
Our county government owns 148 properties. So do all the other counties in Wyoming. And the state owns a whole bunch. And we have that little blue book, or if you got an older one like mine, it's green. It's called the Wyoming Constitution. You know what constitutionally they can own?
Nothing.
The damn building they're in. That's it. They get to own the building where they fleece you. But no. Now we want to pass taxes, and the government, I can't believe this stuff. They want to be in the property business. They want to build houses now for all those poor people in Jackson Hole who can't afford to live there. I feel bad for them. I do. The poor billionaires with all the tax breaks can't get other people to come serve them. They built it themselves. That's the truth. We want to take state lands and build affordable housing, and the state's going to go into the landlord business. Did you not hear that, Cindy? That's what we're going to do with your money. Your money. If you can't afford to live in Jackson Hole, I got some advice for you.
Move.
Rent a U-Haul. Move. Does everybody remember Sam Kinison?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
You remember the skit he did when he said, I'm going to go to Africa in the desert, and I'm not going to give them money, I'm going to get them U-Hauls. I'm going to tell them, we have deserts in America. We just don't live there.
Right.
So that's what we got coming up. And we're going to push for more and more federal funding. And we're at the precipice right now. 48%. Let that sink in for a minute. 48% of the people employed in Wyoming have a government job of one form or fashion. So 52% of everybody in Wyoming is supporting 48%, and we want more federal funds. In California, they're trying to pass legislation to get rid of fireworks. And guess what they're arguing it with? It's bad for the climate. Climate change, it's fireworks. So if I understand their thought process, every time we go through climate change is followed by an ice age. And we've had 3 major ice ages. I never knew just how powerful, before the first ice age, a dinosaur fart really was. That's how arrogant they are. We can't change the planet.
No.
So I'm understanding everybody supports some legislation to get rid of property taxes, and we can backfill it with sales tax. Everybody's in agreement with that?
That's not a bad deal.
I'm going to go forward with it then.
Take
I
a
said
bag
I-
of tea with you.
I said I'd never propose a tax. So I'm actually gonna propose one.
Can I say something, Troy? It should be the homeowner's home, not if they have other houses that they rent out to use for. It should just be their primary home. The property taxes should go up.
It's a perpetual lien.
No kidding. I paid off my house for a couple decades, but I'm still a tenant to the government.
Yes, sir.
Why can't we be like Alaska? We have enough revenue generated by coal, oil, and gas. They were complaining about too much money and not knowing what to do with it 10 years ago. Why should there be any increase in sales tax? We need to decrease their pay, make them abide by the Constitution, and there's no reason why the revenue from oil, gas, and coal aren't sufficient to run 5 states, let alone 1.
Well, what I'm gonna propose will actually take all that coal, oil, and gas revenue away. You're gonna think I'm crazy. Let's let the coal company make money. They're our biggest employer.
Biden's going to ban the coal companies.
They're trying.
Why should they have to pay everything?
They shouldn't. Why do we have the splash park? Has anybody been there? Go to the splash park once. It's out at the Field of Dreams. It's basically concrete that squirts water up. Louise couldn't get her whole water park put in, but she got that put in. And it's in the middle of an open field in Wyoming. What do we have in Wyoming?
Antelope and deer.
Wind. What does wind take with it? What do you think dirt does to the splash pad out in the middle of an open field?
Mud.
I don't think this long.
And then you'll hear the Tom Lubnows turn around and tell you, you guys are selfish. Do you know how much you get versus what you pay for? Your tax dollars are so small here, but we give you so much. You have a fire department in Gillette, Wyoming, with chromed wheels on a ladder truck that can service 2 buildings in the whole town. I hope First Interstate or First National never catches on fire, but if it does, we got a ladder truck. Yes, sir.
Has anybody noticed at the city council meetings, before they get to public comments, before they do anything, they'll spend 10 minutes. Okay, the next bill is $476,000 for some streetlights on a road that nobody travels. All in favor say aye, aye, all opposed.
Aye.
That's right. Yeah. Next, we got another $500,000 for this stupid project. All in favor say aye, aye, all opposed. Yeah, it takes 30 seconds, and I've never heard anybody be able to stand up and oppose it, or even explain why we need some of this stuff. It's like you say, they are a glutton for federal funding.
Yeah, the steps up to the police station and the handicap ramp, they're gonna pay $500,000 for that. I think it should be maybe 100,000, but I mean, maybe there's something I'm missing.
But if you watch this funding behind closed doors, I've seen it before. I came from Kansas City 30 years ago, and I know a lot of people in a lot of places of government. It's always 1 for you,
Yeah.
2 for me, 2 for you, 4 for me.
Yeah, you do.
This money disappears faster than they can spend it, and it doesn't go, half of it doesn't go to the projects that they tell you it's going to.
4 of those you could retire, just 4 of those projects.
By the way, not to be too funny, but it is ironic. They hired the same contracting company that dug a hole in my parking lot and went away. And even they won't go work on the city's stuff. They took their money and when they get to it. Okay, so we're okay with the sales tax increase.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like I said, I didn't think I was ever going to say this, but I am going to try to support a tax to get rid of a horrible, awful, rotten, nasty tax.
How much revenue getting rid of property tax? Personal property?
All of it.
All of it? So it's business tax. Are we talking like 137 to 170, $170 million per year?
We're talking about in the ballpark of $400 million.
For the state.
That you're
to the state.
generating that much that we're losing?
That we'll lose. About a 3%, but a 3% sales tax increase generates over $400 million. You know those taxes you don't pay? Welcome to Wyoming, the cheapest place to live. Unless you want a deer hunt or put license plates on your vehicle or do anything. I'm waiting for the fart tax to come out. They're gonna figure it out. We have an overbloated school system. I don't even know how to sugarcoat this. $2 billion is what we're paying now.
For the state,
State, every year, or every 2 years, excuse me.
for a state of 500,000 people and maybe 100,000 students.
We spend $19,000 to $20,000 per student per year.
Start training animals.
And our ACT and SAT scores are plummeting. Thunder Basin High School is being investigated right now, and they're about ready to lose their accreditation. Because evidently you can go to Thunder Basin High School and graduate with a 4.0 and still be dumber than a box of rocks.
It's nationwide.
It's ridiculous. They finally shut the school down in Chugwater. You know what we were paying to educate 11 kids? 11 kids? $63,000 a year. They still had their full accoutrement of teachers and administration. They still had the big gym and all that stuff you gotta have. I took another legislator with me. We did the school facilities meeting. You have to investigate it. They took their maintenance money and they set it aside for what? Everybody knows. What is it? Come on, somebody. A swimming pool.
The aquatic center.
Aquatic center. I swam in Wyoming. In high school and a little bit in college.
There's a tree growing through the roof in North Campus, I heard.
There are. They just quit doing maintenance. They got ceiling tiles that are cracked. I'm pretty sure if I went in their warehouse, they got ceiling tiles piled up to my armpits. They don't put them in. The doors in there haven't been painted in 12 years, maybe. They got cracked tiles on the floor.
They have a lot of water damage.
What if someone gets hurt, they're gonna get sued, then it's gonna come back on us? Because those are
Exactly.
things that are technically dangerous to kids when they're.
Well, you can't have any swimming pools in the desert.
Let's get them a U-Haul. So,
Troy, they build a new high school, what do they do with the existing campus?
oh, they'll get hot iron to come over and tear it down and build it in the same place.
Okay.
The problem is they haven't thought this through. There's 1,200 kids there. 1,000 to 1,200 kids. You're not gonna build a high school.
Modulars to put them in.
Put them all at Thunder Basin. What? I mean,
They haven't solved that problem.
Put them out in the playground.
They'll probably get just as well educated.
Well, what they could do, what they've done in town, every building that, as an example, Hillcrest. They had to build a new Hillcrest, but the old Hillcrest is still standing. Same thing with stock trail.
Yeah.
Oh, wait a minute, I got the answer. Is the school board watching? We bought them all laptops. Leave them at home and we'll do it through the internet.
It'll be cheaper.
Worked for COVID.
But then,
The fascinating thing I
Dump them
find
down.
though is I interview graduating seniors. And I ask them just basic questions about US history, Wyoming history, what is expected of them now that they're 18 years old, what they need to be doing to make this a better state. And they all look at me like I am full of, they have no idea. They are not taught civics
wait a minute.
in our schools.
They're indoctrinated, they're not taught.
You have expectations for me after I'm out of high school?
Uh-huh.
I can turn my Xbox on. Mom's basement's kind of nice.
Why don't they build a tech high school?
We have one.
We do?
Oh, no, that's a college, sorry.
No, tech high school.
That would be nice. wouldn't
That will teach, in Massachusetts, they teach plumbing, electrical, and carpentry, and when they come out, they're ready to work. In high school.
Are we gonna put Xboxes in it?
No,
Or PlayStation?
give them tools.
That's what our college was supposed to be for, but now we have basketball and all.
They don't want, they
Yes,
don't want
sir.
to work.
Racing and.
Well, I think as long as we don't monopolize the public school system, you can't expect anything else. They can just specify whatever the price they want. Does anyone, in Kansas, we are paying $3,000 more per student per year in public schools opposed to private school. Is there any possibility of getting some competition in the form of school choice where the money for the tax dollars follow the child?
We helped you out. We passed a charter school bill.
Yeah, right.
It's here.
Good.
We're gonna allow 3 charter schools to be formed
Wow.
in the state. And they're gonna have to follow all of the requirements of the regular schools.
Yeah.
This is one of the main reasons that I homeschool.
Have you seen Prairie Wind Elementary? I live in that neighborhood. Have you looked at the new schools they build K through 12? They're bigger than the high schools I went to. So they built a new high school over, and I'm gonna get in trouble because Cindy's from this area, so I might be talking out of my ear, but they got rid of an old high school they had and built a new one. And the utility bill on the new high school is 5 times that of the old one. Genius. Great stuff, huh? I'm gonna cut it off here real quick, but I'll let you know, the grade school I went to in Cheyenne was Hobbs Elementary. It was built in 1959. And it kind of hurts my heart a little. They're getting ready to shut it down. But you think about that, 1959 was when they built it. I didn't go when they built it, I'm not that old, but 60, 70 years old. And I drove past it, and it looks the same as the day I went into it in kindergarten. Now, I might be a poster child or an argument for why that school needs to go away, but there were some other smart kids that got out of it. And here we go. Now we're going to build these huge monstrosities that we can't maintain because it's all for the kids. Kids and the old people. You want to cut taxes, you're going to hurt the kids and the old people. But the kids and the old people never see the money. And I go back to their graduating and they're smart as a box of rocks. I hired them. And there are some good kids, but it's really quite a training process to teach the average child how to count change back.
What people don't understand is that anybody with any common sense can come up with how to educate. They don't want intelligence in the upcoming generations. They want government dependence. so everybody can talk about how they can make things better. That's not what the powers that be want.
They want them,
That it's, what they want has never worked in history in any other country, but they're gonna keep trying.
So I'm gonna close, because I'm gonna get Cindy up here. She's gonna really open your eyes on a couple things related to property tax and the assessment system. It's definitely, I like what the guy said. We need to quit calling DC and Cheyenne a swamp. A swamp's a beautiful thing. It's a great ecosystem. We need to call it what it is. It's a sewer. It's a sewer. So everybody's in favor of, if we could get rid of property taxes, we don't mind paying extra sales tax.
Correct.
I'm fine with that.
And then I think if we can get that through, then we start chipping away and dropping the sales tax. There you go.
Tiny steps.
Didn't Casper, and I could be wrong, but didn't Casper have passed something to where they were not, their sales tax was on everything except for food? Didn't they go through that at one point for a while? I don't know if it's still that way.
The state doesn't pay sales tax on food,
Okay.
but your lovely Republicans, in name only, want to bring back the food tax too.
Oh, no.
In County, when you go buy groceries, there's no sales tax.
Yeah.
But if you go to a restaurant, there's sales tax.
Yeah, that's different.
Because it's prepared.
Prepared hot food. Well, I'm gonna, go ahead.
Just real quick, cigarettes, mocha, can those be taxed? There might not be a popular person.
Well, they are taxed.
They are taxed, hugely taxed. 35% of what you pay for a beer or a pack of cigarettes is taxed.
Same with fuel.
Oh, by the way, guess what industry's subsidized?
Tobacco.
Tobacco.
Yeah.
We subsidize tobacco and then we tax the stout out of it.
Yep.
It's brilliant. We tax subsidies.
We spend billions of dollars subsidizing tobacco, and we spend millions of dollars trying to educate people of how bad it is.
The double dip.
So we went through the hate ordinance, and I'll let you know where I stand on that. I don't care what you do in your own home. I believe you have the freedom and the liberty to make love to your doorknob if that's what you want to do. I just don't want to know about it.
Exactly.
I don't want you teaching my kids about it. I don't want you teaching my kids about normal Christian heterosexual activity. They don't need to know. Because guess what? We all found out, didn't we?
Yeah, the hard way.
We got the urge and then, and pretty soon we knew what it was all about. Some of us were bad at it, but we kind of figured it out. And they will too. And on that note, I will take all night and you won't get to hear from Cindy, who's
Welcome, Cindy.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, you guys. I appreciate Troy and his comments. And I can tell you that having been at Revenue Committee this last session, when they just came back here, what was it, 2 weeks ago, there was a group of people that got together. And I cannot begin to tell you how much it means when, after traveling through the state and getting people to be aware of what's going on with property taxes and talking about it, that we really had people show up. When I ran for office in 2010, I knew that there was a problem in the assessment in Johnson County. And I ran a strong campaign, and against 6 people won. And it was a crazy year. But what I thought was that by getting into office, I could change things. And I have to tell you what, I was very naive and incredibly humbled when I was out of office in 2018. A little bit about me. I grew up in Sheridan, moved south to Buffalo where we raised our family. I have 3 boys and 3 grandchildren, and they are now starting their own businesses, drilling water all around the state of Wyoming. And so I'm proud of my boys. As you were talking about the trades are important. And we need to have our children learn what grit, work, and sweat are all about, don't we? And it's important that they're taught that even in the public school system. And you guys would be interested to know that there are, 1,100, 1,200 ghost positions in the school budget that is actually supposed to be attributed to the trades, that is actually supposed to be helping to teach our kids to weld and to teach them small engines and stuff like that. And it's being caught up in extra positions, and they're giving teachers raises versus teaching our children the trades. So a little bit about the Wyoming history and the assessment process. That's why you guys brought me here this evening. It's important to know that in 1988, there was a constitutional amendment that happened in the state of Wyoming. And I bet each and every one of us voted for this. And if you wouldn't mind, just hand those back. And as you look at that, this is the ballot in 1988. And it's very brief, and I'll read it to you quickly. But it's item number 11 when you get the ballot. And it says, this amendment will allow the legislature to divide property into 3 classes and to assign different percent of value for taxation purposes for each class of property. Now, to each and every one of you guys that just heard that portion, that's what you, the people, educated yourself on and hopefully knew what that meant before you got to the ballot box. Do any of you remember this? I don't remember it, but I can tell you this much. It's so innocuous that I probably voted for this. It just said that they're creating 3 classes of property, correct? Okay. This new constitutional amendment that's coming out in 2024 that Senator Kinski's talking about how he helped the people by being able to get this amendment to come forward will make it so that residential is separated away from commercial, okay? You will be vulnerable. In this ballot, what it didn't show you was that they changed 1 word, actually 2 words in our Constitution. In our original Constitution, it said that we would be taxed at our assessed value. And then in 1988, this amendment, this changed that to full value. That one place in Article 15, when they changed it and we voted for it in 1988, made us it put us in the situation that we are today. So we accepted that we would go to full value instead of the assessed value. And I bet there's not too many people who, Troy?
I have a question.
I wasn't done.
What is full value?
Okay, full value is so if I buy my house for $500,000, I'm gonna pay a tax on its full value.
But is it defined well?
No, it's not defined well.
Thank you.
Yeah, but when you look at, and we've talked a lot about that at the different opportunities to be able to testify on this, that when this constitutional change took place in 1988, it also gave the Department of Revenue the right to promulgate the rules. And in there so defined what full market value was. And then full market value became not only the fact that my house may have sold, but yours didn't. But now, because your house is comparable to mine, you have to meet that statistical change value percentage, and now yours goes up too. How many of you guys pay a tax on an unrealized capital gain? I love the fact that nobody raised their hand. How many of you guys, when you make an investment into something, pay a tax on it before you sell it?
Doesn't make sense.
Well, you wouldn't do it, would you?
They're wanting to, though.
Well, and so they're calling that the wealth tax, aren't they? But stop and think about this. This should humble you to your knees. You're already paying that wealth tax on your home. Here's another thing. We've got a county commissioner in here, it sounds like. When we set the budget as a county assessor, do you go to your county assessor and ask them what the county value is for the year?
No.
You don't?
Well, we do, but he tells us, and it takes a few months before they actually figure it out.
Which they're just certifying those values now to your, yeah, I would
Yes.
agree. But stop and think of it. Isn't it interesting that the percentage that government budgets go up annually within a county matches that county value? Isn't it interesting that a special district who's supposed to be assessing to a budget, not to the county value, not for these funds to come into a slush fund. In Johnson County, we have three special districts that have over $22 million in it. Now, do you suppose that it's okay that they continue to tax when they've got that much sitting in a savings for them to continue their annual operation? Does that seem good? Show of hands.
Our cemetery does that, cemetery does.
I would think that it would seem reasonable that you have 1 year and funds, so that you can budget and be prepared and have a little bit of a buffer zone. Unfortunately, you guys, in the statute, there's absolutely nothing to stop them if they are eligible for a full mill or 3 mills, like your hospital, then they can levy a full mill. But if you read the statutes, it is for their budgetary administrative purposes, not just because they can get a full mill. If their budget is only $200,000, then that's what they should be levying is enough for that $200,000, not the full mill, which would save us, the taxpayers, money every single year. Yes, sir?
Was that sold to us as a rainy day fund that never materialized?
So you hear an awful lot about rainy day funds, and I don't know what constitutes a rainy day fund when you see a rate of inflation hit us like it has hit us this year, right? Or the last 3 years since COVID. Ultimately, we don't mind seeing them be accountable for their money. I want each and every one of you to take some time and look at what's going on in Johnson County right now. I have a really good personal friend who is looking at the audits. And we'll look at yours too if you want us to. Glad to do it. And what we have found is that they are finding material audit findings at the local county level that have happened for 6 years continuously. That means that we have money that is not accounted for. And yet we're still levying this level of mills. The main thing is for you guys to understand this evening in your Constitution, and I'm kind of digress going down the mill levy side, but constitutionally, what happened to us in 1988 got us to where we're at today. It's not sustainable. In the state of Wyoming, there is not a cap. We had opportunities for a cap bill that went through the legislature, and actually we've been presenting that. Chuck Gray was the first one that started bringing it forward about 3 years ago. Natrona County had about 3,000 appeals. I was helping with some of those people with their appeals, as I've helped with some that are here this evening. And so we seen that it was time to introduce a cap. This legislature, this revenue committee that we went to the other day is not interested in hearing from us, the taxpayers. I can tell you that for the last 3 years, I've gone, I've testified, and they know my face well. This last time, though, I have to tell you, it was absolutely brilliant because so many people showed up. Go to your commissioner meetings. They need your help. Not only is this a day to elect the right people, it's also the day to be the wind beneath their wings and support them and push them forward, hold them accountable, and make sure that they do what they say they're going to do. If not, you're going to get something that you may not anticipate. With this new amendment coming forward in 2024, you guys, it'll take commercial and residential and separate them And what they're gonna tell you is that they're gonna change the tax rate down to maybe 8.5%. Okay? So right now it's 9.5%, and they'll take it to 8.5%. But remember what the Constitution says as it reads right now, full market value. Your assessor is mandated by law to make sure that they're within 5%, this gets complicated really fast, of that $500,000 sale that we were talking about. They could be high or low of that $500,000, and they justify that because they say we're mass appraisal. They're not going to use a fee appraiser's information. They're not going to use any of that because it's mass appraisal. Well, I can tell you guys that being a former assessor and being that first assessor that has tried to step out from behind my desk and educate we the people, they don't like the fact that now there's a former assessor talking about the system and what's wrong with it. We do not have uniformity in Wyoming. We do not have equitable assessments. We have what's known as a guest tax, and it should humble every single commissioner to know that that number that is given by your assessor, as much as they're good intended, has so many errors in it. And I feel confident of that. I've seen it throughout the state. I've seen it in Natrona. I've seen it in Sundance. I've seen it in Teton County. Let's talk about Teton County. I have one guy that called me this year, and his home, I don't care how rich you are, I don't care how poor you are, but people cannot sustain these kind of increases for Cheyenne to say our budgets are going up and we need to support them. This guy's tax went from, on his home, his value I should say, went from $4 million in 1 year. $4 million to $11 million.
What is that house worth in Campbell County?
Probably $400,000.
I'll take it.
But I mean, the point being is that your taxes, can you sustain a tax that goes from $26,000 to $52,000 in 1 year? Not only that, we have people on fixed incomes that are trying to get by, and their homes in 2021 went up 20%, and then last year went up another 40%. There's 60%. There's no stop to it. It's an unrealized capital gain. And what if, as they're talking about with this dollar and the depreciation of our currency, that the market fails? Are you going to see it go down? Guess what? We just heard your senator sit here talk about the high ceilings in the new schools and how Johnson County, how our heating doubled. We're not being smart with our money. We're not being smart with our legislative rules that are coming out. And one thing that I'm working very avidly on is acquisition value. I want to see, we all understand that we have to support government. We want good roads. We want things to be fair and equitable. But if I bought my house for $150,000, I should pay a tax on $150,000 with a rate of increase that is commensurate to perhaps the CPI. Maybe that 2-3% that allows it to be reasonable. I don't know how many of you guys ride horses in here, but it's time to double bid this whole, well, I'll say old horse. I mean, it is that we're out of control, and there is absolutely nothing right now to save us. So as we talk about new legislation coming forward, Troy and I talked about the sales tax initiative. I think it's actually brilliant, as long as they get rid of the property tax. And guess what? That takes a constitutional change, because our Constitution right now says that they can tax our property, okay? What I would like to see is for us to go back to our original language prior to 1988. I'd like it to go back to the assessed value at that tax rate. And quite frankly, we always hear that industry is taxed too much at 11.5%. Where were they in 1988? You guys, I don't think they realized this constitutional change was going to affect them. And you know what happened to them? They were 9.5% with all of us. And industry, the mineral production side went to 11.5%. do you really believe and think for 2 minutes that this new constitutional change is actually going to protect you? That government is really out there to really help you? I'm sorry, it's not. Here's what I've learned. For example, and here's another handout that I'll give to you guys. I was helping some friends up in Sheridan County, and so being a former assessor, I know what you can request and what you can't have in an appeal. And so we had gone into the Sheridan County assessor, Paul Fall, and asked him to get the sales and to get the information that this taxpayer needed, and their staff told us, no, can't have it, can't have the sales. We signed the non-disclosures, we did everything that we were supposed to do, but they wouldn't give it to us. Guess what? We got 30 days. Now, what kind of a process, when you hear the state legislature say, well, you got your appeal process, guess what? You pay for the assessor to assess. You pay for the commission to be the commission. The commission gets the county attorney to either be their attorney or the assessor's attorney. You're paying for it, keep that in mind. And then they get a hearing officer, of which through taxpayer, you guys are paying. And then if you need an attorney, you're gonna have to pay for it, or an agent, right? A process that is stacked against you, and you pay for the complete process, and do you really believe at the end of the day that you're gonna get a fair trial? And I'm gonna defend the commissioners just a little bit, because they were put in the position to be that county board of equalization. We do need an unbiased board. We need to remove them from that so that they don't have that weight. They have enough on their shoulders to already take care of the county, honestly. But as a taxpayer, here's one more handout. This is an email that was, it came from Justin McNamara from the Department of Revenue, who is an appraiser trainer. Yes, sir. Did you have a question?
I have a comment if I have just a moment.
Sure.
Because being a commissioner, I mean, I am new at this. And one thing I see in the county business is how we're not really informed on a lot of things. Number one, we aren't told all what the treasurer does or is doing. And just so that you know, that we have millions in banks in Gillette, Wyoming here, plus we've got investments with the county, to where our total money that we just have cash, either in investments or bank accounts, is $1 million. And nobody's taking care of this thing. And they expect the treasurer to do it, and ours ain't doing it. We haven't had an audit complete for the state in a couple of years. And this can affect grants and everything else. And nobody shook up about it, nobody, I'm saying like, you know, we need to get this done. If we gotta get extra people in here, well, let's get it done. Oh, well, they're working on it and they're.
You haven't had an audit come through for the state, a financial audit for the year? You should have one every single year.
We're supposed to.
And you don't have one?
I don't think we've completed one from 2 years ago.
So with all that COVID money, where did it go?
Nobody.
We haven't.
Well, the one thing I can tell you guys is that we're doing that in Johnson County as the people, okay? We're not, this Chris Williams that is actually doing it, he's a double major economics, very brilliant guy, and he has gone through the audited financials of Johnson County, and the findings that he has found has been breathtaking.
Well.
And we're smaller than y'all, you guys have coal mines.
Asking help from people that know, maybe Troy or somebody that can.
Glad to put you in touch with him, because he's offered to do it for every county.
Okay.
The last complete audit done by what's required of the Constitution was finished 2 years ago, and it was done in Bear Oil, Wyoming. And they had trouble auditing a government of 3. Our state auditor basically controls the checkbook. they just write checks. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to
Yeah,
interrupt.
no, thank you. That's a lot of truth to that. As you look at this email, the reason why this email is important is that with it coming from the Department of Revenue, and it was specifically talking about me, you'll see that it says, denoting that Cindy will be the agent for the taxpayer. So they knew who was coming that afternoon. The sad thing is that at the very bottom of this email, and I don't think that the assessor knew what this email said when he handed it to me, but Ken Gill is the second in line at the Department of Revenue. He used to be a field appraiser, and then he started doing more in Cheyenne County, and then now he's the second in line at the Department of Revenue. But it says, Ken also said that you may try not to be very forthcoming with providing the requested materials, that you would likely want to make sure that Paul was aware before you do so. Isn't it sad that at the beginning of this email, it's referencing 3913-109, and that's the taxpayer remedy. It's all the things that you can request when you are appealing your property taxes. It's vague at best. There's a lot of things in here that you don't know that you need to request, but it is saying that you have the right to request this information. 3 years ago, when I was actively helping in Natrona County, I was put on a taxpayer, well, it was a committee, and it was interesting to watch how it took place, because at one point there was a quorum of the revenue, there was all the Assessors Association, the County Commissioners Association, the State Board of Equalization was there, and it was only me representing you, the people, as a taxpayer trying to find relief. What I wanted was clarification in the statute so that it was easier for the general person to read and to know what they needed to request. It was amazing, and Senator Cale Case out of Riverton was one of the primary ones that worked very hard to kill absolutely everything that I had proposed in that. But it started off with being able to change it, and then next thing you knew, Cale Case just got it buried. And so you, the taxpayer, never even seen the opportunity to change this statute. But again, at the bottom of this email, it's the Department of Revenue saying, do not be forthcoming, when at the beginning of this email it says she has every right to receive the documentation that she has requested. So when you have a Department of Revenue that is not taxpayer friendly, and this email proves that, you have to be prepared when you go in for your appeal. It is an arduous process. I can promise you, you will be bullied, and you will be intimidated by those who understand the law and the process when you don't. Yes, sir, go ahead.
I have rental properties, and I appealed mine, and it actually went pretty well. But I met them at the properties and acted as a reverse realtor, like I was downselling the property, like pointing out all the problems, and it actually worked really well, and they lowered the assessment of all of my properties that time. So.
And so that's great. I'm glad that that worked well for you, but I can tell you this much: when you're working in a mathematical analysis and then you take your property and you put it back in there, that assessor is now out of compliance. So if he lowers yours and found reasons to lower yours, does he go to every single other one and do the same thing? And the answer to that is no. And here's another one. When you find that there's a problem in the analysis and you can point out that the whole LEA, which is a land economic area, is wrong, and you want them to correct it for the whole LEA, they won't do it. They will only do it for the person who is appealed. But stop and think about that. If it was wrong, exponentially wrong, everybody else is paying a higher tax. So only the person that appealed it got the right tax. So we have issues in Wyoming, and because we set budgets by it, then that money gets spent. So then you're stuck. So this evening I did not bring examples of the assessment schedule or any of that. I'd like to be able to answer any of your questions that you might have on the assessment process. Watch this constitutional amendment coming up. You guys know the Constitution of Wyoming like the back of your hand. It is not that long. I get it. Maybe it's not the most interesting read for some. I find it fascinating that our 16th article in the U.S. Constitution says that we can be taxed on income, but that in our Constitution, we say that we will tax you already on an unrealized capital gain on your home. We talk about the wealthy. It's already happening. It's just people don't understand it. So, again, it's time that you, the people, I love that you guys are active and that you're willing to speak up and that you're not afraid. But when you see the next revenue committee, that is going to be October 2nd and 3rd in Casper, Wyoming. And I hope to see some of your faces there supporting property tax and your own story. Don't take my word for it. Read it for yourself. Learn for yourself. That's one thing that I find even with our legislature that, I asked time and time again while I was in office, where did our Constitution change? And nobody would show it to me. You know how I got my grubby little fingers on that ballot? And the language? I had to become an intern for an attorney who gave me his password to be able to get in on the Bar Association to start doing my own research. And then I called Secretary of State Chuck Gray's office and asked for the ballot. And then when I read the ballot, it was so easy to see how this happened to us. They just said they're separating 3 classes. And we all would have voted for that. There's some of us who intuitively probably voted no just because it was a change to our Constitution. And thank goodness for those people. I probably was not that smart. But I can tell you it's coming again. It's coming again in 24. And they're selling it to you like it's tax relief. And it is not tax relief. You may see a slight decrease one year. But they also have what's known as the neighborhood adjustment, okay? And every single one of you in this room needs to make sure that you have your property profile from your county assessor. How many of you guys know what that is? You probably do, right?
I actually don't.
Oh, dang. See, I got you one then. So, property profile. You want your complete profile. That's what tells you what you're being taxed on. That tells you your square footage, how many rooms, your wall height, what's your grade, is your grade average or good? You need to know that, and you need to know a history. So get 2 years, get 3 years. They can make a PDF by year, and they can email it to you, or they can print it out for you. Go in and pick it up.
The assessor's office?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think online,
Yeah.
they have it by year.
So they have what's known as the GIS system, and what's beautiful about your property profile as printed out through the RealWare system is it's easy to read. Don't get the cost breakdown sheet. That's a made-up query that they just pull information out of the computer with. You want your property profile with your pictures. What do they have of your pictures? And know something, your pictures are posted on the county GIS website. And so anybody can see your pictures anywhere of your place and any of your improvements, any of it. If you don't want that active, you can ask your assessor, and it's just one little check mark in the computer system to shut that off. They still have the data, they can still see it, but we can't.
But it's not public.
No, it's just not public online because.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to be public online, it's safety.
Yeah, it's.
We go to the assessor's office online,
Yeah.
basically any county, because we
Yeah.
insure in all the counties. Campbell County has, because we have money, the information of the assessor's office is wonderful. But there are some of them you go in, you don't see it because somebody has requested it be taken down.
Yeah.
So I call the assessor's office and they just email it over to me.
Yeah. Yeah. But also like deeds and stuff too. I've requested deeds to not be available, so yes.
I just wanted to know, if we aren't able to get rid of it completely, why not base it on the purchase price? That would take all the guesswork out of it, and that wouldn't be nice for them because they can't increase it so much, but then it would be like seems like it would promote stable people keeping their properties for a long time and things like that.
And that's exactly right. So through Equality State Taxpayer, and this is something new just as of this morning. So Equality State Taxpayer is on Facebook. And of course, we spoke up quite a bit at Revenue Committee. And then today I got a notice that I've been locked out of the account because we made a post that was not representing a true person and that we were misleading people. And everything that I do is I'll pull information from other areas, but none of it was made up. So I think somebody is wrongfully reporting Equality State Taxpayer. But back to your point on acquisition. Acquisition value, I think, is a good approach. I think that knowing that, and we're talking about, they did a rollback to 2019 prior to COVID, and then, but from that point go forward, that your acquired price is what you would be taxed on. And then with a rate of increase of 2 or 3% based off the CPI, and then also decrease, because your markets can go down. So there has to be a protection built in both ways so that you can see that adjustment. And then ultimately, if you think of it, and I oftentimes think of the small communities in Wyoming, I bet they have better budgets than those of us who have oil and gas and coal and uranium and everything else and soda ash, because they have to rely on what's just right there. And so I bet their government is in check a little bit closer, although I know they get federal funding. And just like with your city council, like you guys were talking about with this inclusion and everything else, I can't help but wonder if that's tied to federal dollars.
Sure it is.
Yeah.
So hang on tight. I mean, we're getting ready to go into a very strong legislative year. We need you guys to use your voices. Like I said, when I was in office, I couldn't speak up, I couldn't lobby. And that now that I'm on the outside with what I learned in the office, sharing it with the people, I realize just how strong and powerful of a message it can be in empowering you, the people, to speak up at legislature, at joint revenue. And you know what? You can see the facilities testimony that Troy was talking about with the Campbell County School. I was watching that, I think it was yesterday, on YouTube. So you can look up any of these committees and see how your legislatures are actually testifying, and it's shocking, in my opinion. When the county commissioners, I'll get to you just a second, when the county commissioners can come to a tax cap bill conversation and say, well, so-and-so couldn't make it because they were going out and so-and-so else couldn't make it, so you ended up with me here tonight. It was Mr. Livingston, and then he said, and the county commissioners vote no. And I'm sorry, but the county commissioners, county assessors, county treasurers, the only thing that they should be telling us is what is the process? How does this bill affect this? They should have no pull to an opinion of a bill. That's called lobbying. And that's not what our elected officials are there for. They're there to uphold the laws and to administer them as they are passed by the state legislature, not to go in and lobby. And they should educate themselves enough to understand that a cap on our property taxes would have been relieved 3 years ago. And every single time they've killed it. This last year, it was Senator, I believe, Harshman, who tacked on a huge appropriation, like a $44 million appropriation to the cap bill, so that we could refund the revenue lost going to schools by doing a cap on the cap. So when you see the people like the Freedom Caucus taking a fall for killing all these bills, keep in mind, our conservative legislators are less than the rhinos and the redcoats that are sitting down at Cheyenne. And it is important that we're strong enough that we support these guys. They're killing bad bills. So if they've killed a property tax bill, it's because it was a bad bill. They didn't want to Nancy Pelosi it, they actually read it. And so it's important to remember that If you read the paper, you pay $1 for that paper, and don't rely that that is not a twisted approach to what the facts really are. Educate yourself, ask questions, hold your legislators accountable, talk to them, call them, go to your commissioner meetings, support those good ones that you guys have elected. You had a question?
Yeah, it's probably a really stupid one, but shouldn't your assessment be based on the actual equity you have in your property?
On your equity? So if you're gonna go off of equity, so you're talking about if you have a loan and what your actual value is that side?
How much of your house do you actually own?
Yeah. You'd never get that through. And that's not a dumb question. It's just that it's so complicated. That's why, back to acquisition value, if you're willing to pay a price for a property, you know your budget, don't you? And you can afford that budget. But it's when you buy it at $150 and then it goes to $550, that's not in your budget. And that's what we're going through here. Main reason why I get out here and do a lot of this stuff, Mr. Myers is a gentleman that lived in Buffalo. He came into my office one year and he had just lost his wife of 63 years and his property taxes had gone up a lot. And he wanted to understand why. And I explained to him. And, you know, World War II vet, just a wonderful, beautiful person. And you guys, he bowed his head and he said, "I'll pay my tax." And he stood up and he shook my hand and he said, "Thank you for explaining this to me." And he was kind, he was nice, there was nothing belligerent about it. And I vowed that when I was out of office that I was going to make sure that I helped as many people as I possibly could know and understand how to appeal, how to feel supported, but then also to help to change these laws. And I personally am not going to give up. I hope that you guys will be at Joint Revenue October 2nd and 3rd in Casper, Wyoming, and be ready, if not to testify, but be willing to raise your hand to say, "I'm here on the property tax issue," because I want to know and hold you accountable. And then, but if you feel so compelled, please do testify. Any other questions?
Yeah, what process would have to go through to have it on the cost of your home? I know I have a home in Arizona, and it shows, you can go back and you see how much everybody paid from the day it was built. And that's what they tax you on. And so it's totally different than, you know.
So they tax you at that beginning value of that?
No, they tax you at what you bought it at. So like if I bought a home for $600,000, I paid at that. And I think they do increase it a little bit.
So in Arizona, they're at full market value, just like Wyoming, but they have a cap.
Well, what they do is it's what you pay for. So if I bought the house and say it's worth $15 million 5 years from now, I still only pay on what I purchased it at.
Really?
So
I would check into that.
So how, yeah, you got to check that. I could be wrong, but how would we go about getting? That's what Ben was talking about. How would we go about getting that type of thing into the equation?
Well, so we fought really hard last year, and we do have an acquisition study bill that did go through last year. Unfortunately, the people that they hired to do the study, it's called Team Consulting. I personally hired them in Johnson County. They're fabulous when it comes to mass appraisal, and they've all been appraisers for different counties, as, you know, just as we're doing it right now. And I'm worried that this study is going to come back very biased to it not being supportive of acquisition value. So what do we need? We need the Constitution to read our assessed value, and then we need the Department of Revenue to redefine what full value is, because I think it's as easy as a definition. If you can define full value as the property price, and it's full value of, say, $100,000, right? If that's, where does it say full value, and then I gotta be compared to my neighbor? That's the part that catches us. That's the part where the analysis comes into play. So why can't full value be just that, full value, and then read forward? So I personally think a definition change we have to look at the Constitution and how they changed it back in 1988 and get it back to its original form. Support the bill that's out there right now for acquisition value. They need, when we spoke up at Revenue last year, it was just me and one other guy from Casper. And they said, well, you got one person from Buffalo and one person from Casper. So the people really are not interested in this. So they've got to hear from you guys.
If you did a change to assessed value, you wouldn't have to have full value defined, would you?
I think it would keep it safe. You know, if we defined what full value was and how to approach full value, yeah, I think that keeps it safe. I think you want every possible way to show that it's just that acquired value with that percentage change. Now, if Troy's able to get done what he's talking about, I mean, that's an abolishment of property tax, and then the only thing that I can think of with that is as long as they abolish it. And I got to tell you, we've got an unfriendly legislature when that comes to play. So if we were able to change the definition and take small steps, if we're able to just get the small step to where we can get to the acquisition value and then implement that, that'd be awesome.
We can do that without changing the Constitution.
How? Article 15.
Because what we did as a legislature, we left the back door. So the tax won't go away. It'll still be there. Everybody will just be exempt. Because we can exempt you. We don't even need to change the Constitution to do that. So initially, that's how we'll propose the bill. Kind of like the Oprah show.
But couldn't
You
the
get an
next, couldn't the
exemption,
next
you get an
legislator
exemption.
change it back?
What's that?
Couldn't the next legislator change it back?
Yeah.
2 years down the road?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I have a statement.
Yes.
I've had my house now for 37 years.
Can you speak up, please?
I've had my house now for 37 years. I just did a quick mathematical calculation. The sales tax percentage on my house has gone up a higher percentage than the value of my house. So I don't know how they're calculating it. Shouldn't they be even?
What do you mean the sales tax?
I mean, not property tax, I'm sorry. I said sales tax, I apologize. My property tax in the 37 years that I've owned that house has gone up at a percentage rate higher than the value of my house has gone up.
That's very common, I hate to say.
So is it, what we're doing, is it accurate? It's not.
No, and that's why, you know, your poor commissioner back here who has to set a budget against a number that is an assumed value that is there that potentially is not there. Yeah, it's a big deal. Yep, yes, sir.
My house is paid for, my taxes have gone up, I'm sure as everybody else has had, 4 times in the last 5 years. I got a note on the door today from Clements, assessor. Is your basement finished? How much? Okay, so your basement's finished. We're gonna assess your taxes. I'm sure there's gonna be another increase.
Yeah.
You got a new roof? Yeah, well, there's another increase. How much paint did you buy for? When does it stop and how much information are they allowed to get from me? I know they can have a drone, fly over it. Okay, you got a new deck. And I can get out of that, but how do I fight how much information they get between my 4 walls and under my roof?
Well, where I'll leave that is that you never have to let an assessor in.
Well, I know that, but I mean, why would they even do that?
Because they are trying to determine the value of your home. And yes, if your basement is finished and you didn't report it and it's not showing up as finished, that's why they're asking, is that it doesn't show up. And that's why you guys want your property profile, okay? Because your property profile will show you what they're taxing. It'll help you to see what is on, or how they're coming up with your number, okay? And then if it's not on there, that's up to you to report as you see fit. But, I mean, if it's there, I mean, I'd be remiss to tell you anything other than, I mean, you gotta report it, but.
I do legally have to report it? Or can I tell them, no, I've got 4 burner walls and unfinished basement, no paint, and
Here's the scary thing, and I've seen this a lot. I'll answer this way, okay? Is people didn't answer the question, and then they assumed it was there and put it at a higher grade.
okay. So they can make it whatever they, okay.
They definitely can. Yeah, and then you have to prove them wrong.
Which I can't do.
Yeah, you can. You can let them in and show them, you know, if they're wrong, then
Well, I
definitely.
mean, yeah, okay.
Yep.
So at the last committee meeting, I actually asked the Department of Revenue this question. Am I gonna pay taxes on my carpet forever? And you know what they told me? Yes, you are. They didn't even blink.
Yeah. You have a question.
Yeah, I bought a house. I went down and got a plot plan to do some improvements. And the house that was on the plot was not the house that was on the plot plan. Okay? And I called them over and again, and I asked them, I said, so how is this assessed? Is it by square footage? Oh, they assured me that they came out and took it by square footage. But shouldn't there have been some concern that that house was not the one on the plot plan that was in the city ordinance or city files?
So something different was built than what was permitted? Okay. And did what they have on their records what was permitted? They had the one that the city had listed?
No, they have the one that was originally permitted for that area on the plot plan, and it was across the street and 3 doors down.
Okay, but was it bigger?
Quite a
Okay.
bit more square footage because it was one level.
But because it was permitted that way through the city, which is kind of interesting because then those city permits go to the assessor. And if you don't report differently, they use that information.
Cindy?
Well,